This video is going to be a quick introduction to NPM Scripts. So NPM Scripts are kind of a very rudimentary task runner. The idea is that if you have a very common set of shell scripts that you run, you can take those snippets and you can dump them into your package.json file and then run them with NPM. So it takes the redundancy out of some certain things. They have a couple interesting aspects to them, and we'll go over those as we move along. So I guess to start off, let's go ahead and create an NPM project right here, or a node project right here. So I'm in an empty directory, and I'm going to go ahead and do npm init, and I really don't care about any of these parameters right here. And then I'm going to go ahead and open up code on this directory. All right. So we have code open, we have our package.json file, and we already see that underneath scripts, we have this test script. So that's just an arbitrary, well, it's not so arbitrary. We'll talk about why test is a little bit of a special case in a moment here. But it's just a sort of script that goes out and echoes out error, no test specified, and then it exits with 1. Now remember, if an application or a process returns a status code of anything but a 0, that indicates there was a failure. So basically this is just printing out that we didn't specify a test script, so it put in a default for us. We don't need the scripts at all. We don't need the test script at all. But it's such a common thing to put in here that the NPM automatically inserts it for us. But yeah, let's go ahead and see how we can run this. So to run a script, what we can do is type in npm run script and then the script name. So the script name is going to be what attribute, what key is used in this object defined in your package.json. So I can say run script test. And you see it runs. You'll notice a whole lot of, I'm getting quite a few, a little bit of a diagnostic information here that's relevant, but you do see that the script ran. Error, no test specified. So another way we can run this is npm run test, and that'll give us the exact same output, as the npm run and npm run script are just aliases for each other. So yeah, so to write your own script, it's pretty straightforward. We just add another property to this object. So we can go ahead and say greeting, write a greeting script. And the greeting script will should come as no surprise to any of you. It'll simply echo out hello world. And now I can say npm run greeting. Pretty straightforward. So I get hello world printed. One aside, if you're interested in this sort of thing, we can do pre and post scripts as well. So I can say pre greeting and say echo before greeting, and I can also do a post greeting after greeting. And now if I were to go ahead and say npm run greeting, we'll see that we get, of course, we get an error because I don't have a comma. That happens, unfortunately. Happens to all of us. Okay, so we see before greeting, then hello world, then after greeting. Of course, the order inside of this object doesn't matter. I could have defined greeting before pre-greeting and the same thing would happen. What I'm just trying to point out, though, is we can write our own custom scripts. We can write a pre and then the script name to have a script run before it, and then post and then the script name to have a script run after it. I'm including this for completeness, not necessarily that I'm just including this for completeness in case you guys have seen or see other package.jsons with pre and post scripts in it. But anyway, so we've seen how we have a predefined test script. We see we have a greeting script, a pre-greeting script, and post-greeting script. So let's take a moment and talk about the special scripts. And I'm finger quoting right now, but obviously you guys can't see that. The special scripts that are recognized by both NPM and also recognized by other infrastructure. For example, they might be recognized by a continuous integration server. For example, a continuous integration server might automatically run a script called test, whereas a hosting environment might run a particular script such as start. Now, start is another special script that's recognized by convention in both NPM itself and in hosting environments. So we can say starting, and not surprisingly, stop is also available, and also restart. So these are very common scripts. So start would be used to start your Node server, stop to stop it, restart to restart it. If you do not have a restart script, generally what will happen is start will be or stop will be called, and then start will be called. And these are things that are hooked into Node itself or NPM itself. They're also things that are hooked into by hosting environments. So your hosting provider might require that you provide a start and a stop script so that when you deploy your application to your hosting provider, they have a known entry point that they can just execute in order to perform these operations. But they're also special in another way, in that they have aliases of them inside of NPM itself. So what do I mean by that? Well, we of course can say npm run start. We can do that. But there's an alias, because this is a specially known script. We can say npm run, or sorry, just npm start runs the same script. We can do npm stop, npm restart. But of course, we can't do npm greeting. We can't do npm greeting. We can't run this script because it's not specially known by npm. There's a couple more of these aliases. For example, npm t, which I personally don't really like that very much, but it works. npm t is an alias for tests. So as you see, our test script is being executed. So for example, something you might want to do, like in your start script, you might want to say node server.js, right? So you type in node and then /server.js, and then you might have a server.js file, and it might say something like starting server, but not really because this isn't a server. So you might have something like that. And now when I go ahead and say npm start, you'll see that my Node application was executed from that. So yeah, and another side note, I can do pre-start, post-stop, pre-start, post-start, pre-stop, post-stop, all that fun stuff. Pre and post scripts work as well. Okay, there's really only one other interesting kind of feature of doing NPM scripts, and that comes into play when we download packages that have tools built into them or available with them. You might recall that we installed HTTP server globally or I installed it globally on my system. You guys might have. I recommend that you do, by the way. It's a very, very handy tool. But remember, we installed that globally, and then it went into my C users Nelson app data roaming NPM folder, and the tools, or its executables, were dumped out here into this folder so that I could actually run them. So, because of course this directory is added to my path, so I can run these tools anywhere. But what happens if we install a module locally that has the same sort of thing, has a command that you're intending or that you're supposed to execute or can execute? Well, one common thing to do in most languages is run a linter. So a linter is basically a program that kind of evaluates your code. It might give you statistics for your code. It might tell you that you're doing things wrong or non-standard way. It might point out potential bugs. That's kind of what the concept of linting is. And every major language has a linter. Some have several. JS is one of the languages that have several linters. And a very common thing is you would want to have a linter linting your application both during development, but also before deployment or before starting up the server itself, just to absolutely be sure that, or to be as certain as possible that you don't have any syntax errors or have any other issues, or that you aren't violating some sort of rule that you added to it. So the linter we're going to use is JSHint, and you're more than welcome to hop over to the JSHint documentation. But for now, what I just want to do is I want to show you guys what happens when we include a local package that has a tool with it. So I'm going to say npm install JSHint, and then I'm going to say save dev. And I'm saying save dev here because JSHint is a build. It's not a build tool, but it's a tool that you would use primarily during development. So I'm going to save it to my dev dependencies. And I'll hit enter and let that go out and do its thing. All right, so we see a bunch of, so JSHint got installed, all of its dependencies got installed, and we see over here, because I said save dev, it appeared in the dev dependencies, which is a good thing. But now let's go ahead and see what it looks like inside of our Node modules. So coming into Node modules, we see we have all of these awesome dependencies, which are represented by this tree on the command line right there. But we also, in addition to the dependencies, as well as JSHint itself, we now have this folder called .bin. If I open up .bin, hey, look at that. That looks eerily similar to what I have on my, my app data. And it's basically the exact same concept. So every single tool or package that comes with additional tools is going to dump its additional tools into the .bin folder of your Node modules so that we can execute it from there. So for example, well, I mean, I guess now the question is how can we execute it? Because you can't do this. I can't just type in JSHint because that folder hasn't been added to my path, my environment variable path, or the path environment variable. So I can't execute it like I would a global script, like a HTTP server, because I didn't install it globally. So what we would do is we would do node modules .bin JSHint, and you see it executes. And we can do -- help to read some of its documentation. For example, we might want to say /server.js, and then we want to say show non-errors. And as you can see, we already have a potential issue, implied globals console. So we're implying a global here with my console.log, which is a potential issue in some JavaScript code. But the point is I am now linting my server.js, right? So if I went in here and introduced a syntax error or a semantic error, notice how I get an error by running the linter. But this is really cumbersome. So saying node modules, bin JSHint, server.js, show non-errors gets really cumbersome, and let's say I want to run this code or run this little thing all the time, but I don't want to type it out because that just sounds annoying. So that's pretty much one of the biggest advantages of using NPM scripts is to be able to kind of take that little script and put it in here. But there's another interesting aspect to NPM scripts, and that is, so let's go ahead and say lint. Let's create a script called lint, but check this out. I can just say JSHint server.js and then show non-errors, and that's it. So another interesting thing that you need to be aware of with Node scripts is it'll automatically import all of the additional commands from the bin directory, and they're able to be invoked without fully qualifying their path. So now over here, I can delete all of this nasty code, and I can say npm run lint. So not only do I get my additional details right there, which is cool, I also get my 2 errors, which is cool, but I also get a failure, which is also cool, because JSHint returned a non-zero status code, which indicated to NPM that it failed. Which the reason why this is so cool is because a continuous integration server might run this script for us. You might even put this lint task in place of the test script if you wanted to. And it might stop the build entirely if this particular script returned anything but a non-zero status code. So if I came in here and I fixed that nasty syntax error and ran my lint again, notice how I still get my additional data that I specified with that flag, but I don't get a failure because there were no errors. There was just that additional data about my implied global. Anyway, I fully encourage you guys to go check out JSHint and read about it. For now, that's out of the scope of what I wanted to do. Primarily, I just wanted to familiarize you guys with NPM scripts. And the reason for this is mostly for your ability to read other people's packages. Personally, unless you're hooking in to test start or stop or restart. And you're hooking into them in order to take advantage of tools, external environments such as hosting providers or continuous integration that expect you to have those specified. I generally don't recommend using NPM scripts over an actual task runner such as Gulp. And Gulp is going to be a big part of this series, which we're really leading up to in a lot of ways. But you can think of this as a very simple task runner for simple things. But another reason why I wanted to introduce this is I want to take a look at a couple other modern web development things. I want to talk about ECMA Script 6 some more. I want to talk about less CSS as well. And we're going to be taking advantage of scripts to make that process a little easier before we dive into Gulp, because when we dive into Gulp, you'll see how Gulp makes these processes significantly easier to write. Anyway, so that's NPM Scripts, and I suppose we'll see you guys in the next video.